Dysregulated kid isn't giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. Hi, I'm Dr. Roseann, and I make calming dysregulation easy. And today we're talking about simple ways to help kids manage big emotions and frustration. Because let's face it, our kids aren't equipped in the same way that kids from the 70s, 80s, and 90s were for handling frustrations because we're not giving them as many opportunities to be independent in their problem solving. And so they can become incredibly reactive when things aren't perfect, go their way, or uncomfortable. And kids learn to self regulate, and each problem is an opportunity for them to get better at handling frustration. What is emotional regulation? And it's one's ability to handle, to tolerate, to get through frustration. Kids can develop healthy coping skills, healthy ways to tolerate it, right? And, why do some kids struggle more with frustration than others? Sometimes it's developmental delays, sometimes it's a period in their life when they're just overloaded, kind of like us. Sometimes they don't have a parent who regulates themselves and demonstrates the behaviors they expect from their kid, right? Basically, you've got your stuff. Sometimes there's brain differences. Sometimes there's a lack of those opportunities to learn those skills. Just know that your calm is their calm. And before they can self-regulate, you've got to self-regulate. And so parents have a huge role in developing those self-regulation skills. I know you're saying I'm overwhelmed. So is half of American parents, right? But you can help to shape your child's ability to tolerate, to regulate those uncomfortable sensations, handle frustrations, and they need to learn how to self-soothe. And you are their key because co-regulation is the key. Kids can borrow some of your regulation when they're dysregulated. They're going to borrow your dysregulation when they're frustrated. So how do you do that? We're going to talk about 3 ways to help our kids be better at managing frustration, because when kids know how to problem solve, they can feel really good about themselves. And when kids feel good about themselves, there's no limits in what they can do, right? Co-regulation before expecting self-regulation is critical, right? Kids can't regulate alone until they've learned it through co-regulation, right? And I talk a lot about something that I'm trademarking called reset to regulate. You've got to reset yourself in order to regulate. And it doesn't have to be that big of a deal, right? You can do breath work, you can do prayer, you could do calm PEMF. You can add a little magnesium. You're going to need more than magnesium. You're going to use magnesium in conjunction with techniques. When we are regulating, we're paying attention to our voice, to our tone, our expression, right? And when your child is dysregulating and you see it, you actually can do breath work together. You can do some of that progressive relaxation together. And what you want to do is you want to always validate your child's feelings. So validation is a big old therapist term. It's a great hack that everybody should do. So when you validate somebody, you don't agree with them, right? So you might not agree with, true story, your kid throwing their computer off the porch today. That's okay. But what you can say is, I see you're frustrated. Yeah. So let's think about some ways to handle that, right? So first step in helping your child managing that frustration is to co-regulate yourself before you expect your child to self-regulate, because you got to demonstrate the behavior you want to see. Number 2, we want to create age-appropriate calm down plans, right? For handling big emotions, frustration, right? Know that we have a trend to expect way too much out of kids today. Kids, again, emotional regulation is learned. You are not born that way. Yes, some kids are more regulated. You hear me talk about this all the time. Same genetics, but somehow we have different regulation. Sometimes nervous systems are just more sensitive to things, and so kids are just on edge. Their nervous system is too much in a sympathetic dominance. That's why it's so critical to do these things for yourself, because monkey see, monkey do, and your kids are much more likely to repeat it, right? My kids didn't wake up and say, "Oh, I want to have super sad. I want to have brajol. I want to have a calamari, zuppa de pesh." We made it. They were indoctrinated into it, right? Just like everything else in life. Why can't you teach self-regulation? But you got to get it together first. So young children, the biggest thing about young children is they don't have the words to express themselves. And we wind up giving young children a much longer, leeway, right? We give them more rope. They can't process their emotions in the same way. So that's why I believe sensory techniques are important for every age, particularly our neurodivergent individuals, are individuals struggling with mental health, but it is key, right? And so what are some things we can do for young children, home or school, right? We can have a calm down corner that has access to sensory tools, weighted blankets, weighted stuffed animal, Play-Doh, my Lego. I'm a huge fan of Legos for sensory regulation of every age. It's one of my all-time favorite techniques, ways to do things. You want to teach simple ways that they can regulate. So, doing a belly breath, a fake bubble breath. There's all kinds of things. If you're looking for more ideas, we have a ton of different solutions that parents, professionals can access. You go to drroseann.com/help. You take a solution matcher and it's going to match you to the right solution, including our dysregulation solution, which has lots of these wonderful tools in there and very simple how-tos and role plays. Basically, it has everything you could think of for life's toughest parenting moments. We want to really think about with young children visuals to help them label, right? I love those emotional wheels that help kids put labels, because anger is one. And we shouldn't avoid anger. We shouldn't avoid frustration. We shouldn't avoid upset. But we have to teach them how to get through it, label it, and tolerate it, right? Okay, school age kids. So what they are just becoming a lot more self-aware, and what they need to be directly taught is coping skills, right? Because they need to be able to start learning how to be independent. Start, people. Don't think your 7-year-old, your 12-year-old is going to know how to do this. You are still their coach. You are still reminding them of the plays. And that's what coping skills are, right? They're beginning to identify their triggers. They're beginning to understand, that's a trigger for me. But if I do this, this is what happens, right? Today, in the last couple of days, one of my best friends is Cynthia Thurlow, and we were chatting about something that was a trigger, and I was like, okay, I got to use this, and just know that it's something that's developing, right? Essential oils are one of my all-time favorite things to help my nervous system either get stimulated and focused or calm. So we all have to actually practice things. So one of my favorite techniques for school-age kid is something called pause, breathe, choose, right? So when we're frustrated, teach your child to pause for a second, right? And there's going to be degrees of success on this, but the more you repeat it, need 100 times to do something for a wired uniquely individual to master it at an innate level. Once we start doing things at a repetition, subtle cues will activate your child into doing this, right? Just like you're driving, right? If you're a driver and you're driving home, you're not thinking about it anymore. You're doing this, your subconscious is. We can do the same things with regulation because it's learned, right? So pause when frustrated, breathe through it. You want to do 3 to 5 belly breaths, diaphragmatic breaths. And again, you can teach this with younger kids, but younger kids are going to really need you to walk them through. We're going to do this with school age kids, but they're going to eventually do it on their own. And then choose. We're going to choose a coping method, a coping strategy to get through that uncomfortableness. And nobody's going to have the same way. In our resources, we have a lot of coping statements. We want to create a coping toolbox, right? That's going to have sensory things. It could have things like noise canceling headphones, squishy balls, And we want to make sure that not only they have access to it, we reinforce them for using it, right? How about you're using it? And I love movement to reset. When you see somebody starting to dysregulate, it's like, wow, I can see that was really frustrating for you, right? Especially for kids that are bottle corked, right? Where you're always like, let's start moving. And then kids will know I need to move, I need to pause. Give your kids an opportunity to pause. And then we want to encourage emotional awareness, things like mood check ins. I love to do this with school age and teenagers. Like, wow, that was frustrating. On a scale of 1 to 5, teenagers, you can go 1 to 10. How frustrating was that? Oh, that was a 5. Okay, well, you got through it. What happened, right? We want to create that awareness so that they then can recognize it the next time, but then employ coping strategies, because we are to stop bubble wrapping our kids and instead teach them how to manage frustrations, problem solve through it. Because guess what? Life is that way. And the things we learn now as young children, as school-age children, will help us get through it, right? Teenagers, in order to help them be self-regulated, how to help them be independent, we really need to have them focus on coping statements. If this is new and you're just starting with a teenager, just assume that if they're struggling, they probably haven't learned the skill, right? So start with yourself, look at yourself, ask yourself if you're regulating, because that's step one. And it's never too late to deal with your stuff. Maybe you got some parenting trauma. Maybe your parents didn't even know what the word emotional is. I say this quite frequently. I still do intakes when people come in our brain behavior reset program. And I would say the majority of parents don't use emotional language, and they're going to be shocked. And when I say this, I evaluate quickly in a few minutes. Can I hear words that focus on emotions? Not I'm frustrated. Oh, they're frustrated and annoyed. But do they work on developing awareness? Do they work on developing skills on that? And you'd be surprised. Now, obviously, I'm trained. I freak people out with my level of analysis pretty quick, but you can't turn it off. We are moving away from emotions being important, because they really are, and they will help your child self-regulate. You think it's behaviors, but it's just an outward cry for help that I'm not feeling right in the inside. I'm not feeling safe. I'm not feeling secure. I'm feeling unregulated. We want to help teenagers, right? Back to teenagers, we want to help them identify what works for them, right? In the same way we do with school age kids, except teenagers are more with it. They might be a little more defensive. So we want to be careful not to shame or blame. I was driving with Max yesterday, and, I love to tell him my stories. I'm starting to unfold and tell him our 80s stories. How did our parents just let us go into the city all the time in a group? We were okay, because my mom didn't worry about me. She always worried about my older sister, told me to take care of my older sister. It was the truth. She just didn't have it together. I wasn't naive, but it still meant that I had to problem solve and think things through. I was very self-aware. We really want to explicitly teach teenagers stress reduction techniques, right? Maybe you're going to yoga class together. Maybe you're doing breath work. Maybe you say, hey, we're going to do a 30-day challenge. There's lots of resources that we have that you can do. You want to get them to be more mindful and aware, and it comes through practices, doing somatic check-in. Where do I feel it in my body? Again, using a thermometer. I'm on a scale of 1 to 10. I feel so worried. It's a 3. Okay, well, that's not that bad. What's starting to activate it? Let's identify it and employ, right? We want to encourage that problem solving around it. And of course, reinforce and reinforce more. It doesn't mean say good job. It means, wow, Joey, I loved that you were a 9 and you went out for a walk and got yourself down to a 7. That's great. Now, parents are like, what do you mean? I got him down to a 7. It wasn't a 0. How about progress, people? Parenting is not perfection. We don't want to parent our kids to perfection either. We want our kids to recognize they're in control. We want to empower them and guide them. Step 3, we want to teach, repair, and reflect after meltdowns, outbursts, upset. We don't want to we don't want to teach them to avoid uncomfortableness. We want to teach them that they can get through it. And what are those strategies, right? Because when we teach avoidance, kids have no problem solving skills. There's, again, this bubble wrap stuff has got to end. Otherwise, you're going to have kids who are just like, I can't find this. Help me do this. Oh, I didn't do this. And they constantly are looking for you to rescue them, right? Instead of, hey, mom, I had this problem. This is how far I got, and I still need some help. That's totally different, right? Now, if your kid is constantly having that and sort of incomplete, then you got to think, what else are they missing? Put your detective hat on, right? Again, emotional regulation, how to manage frustration, how to problem solve is a learned skill. You have the power to teach that. You have that power to really help them. If you need more support in figuring out how to do that, you can go to drroseann.com/help. And remember, you're going to take that solution matcher. There's all kinds of solutions in there. Things like our quick calm, things that you can start using immediately because they're downloads that can help guide you as parents, right? So just know you got this. You're moving your kid from dysregulation to calm.